Hello and welcome to another question. Today's question is, are we all able to access past lives through a past life regression therapy? All right, so we're going to start with our overarching consciousness. We're going to look at that symphony and what is comprised within that symphony. What's comprised within that symphony is a multitude of music notes, and each music note is a life that is whole, total, and complete. Now, when this life is created, and I'll use myself as an example, when Marin was created, this body, this particle was created. In utero, first of all, there is no veil. It's development, there's free flow of information, there's no separation between the veil and the human that is developing at the onset of conception. That's when it all begins. Now, once we're born, we get a veil. Our brain says, we don't need any of this information right now because we don't know exactly what information is relevant to this particular life experience and what information isn't. And so the very first thing that we really start to do is say, okay, we need to learn how to communicate within this life because we need to figure out how we're going to survive it. So some of the very first things that our veil is doing and information that it's letting through is the communication. So communication between you as an infant and your caregiver, your mom or your dad or whomever. And we start this out maybe through crying or some form of communication that gets our needs met. And as that develops, so does the form of communication, and more information starts coming in. And this is because the veiled system in our brain is picking up on different frequency. And as that frequency is coming in, our brain lights up and different areas of our brain are ignited, and it's basically translating a lot of information. I was going to say something, and I'm actually going to write it down because I think it's a separate question that I want to answer. So bear with me for 2 seconds. What the question is that I wanted to write down, this is all a side note, is showing that the information, the access to information that we have is still there even if we have damage to our brain here, because our brain isn't the host of information and the brain isn't the developer of the information that we have. Which is actually really important because this is how it's going to kind of answer the question, do we have access to past lives? Sometimes as children, and I use children because it comes out very naturally through children, a past life or even a future life comes through the child. And they're like, oh, I used to be your grandpa, or you used to be my best friend, or whatever it is. And historically, we can go back and find the information that this very young child is telling us, and information this child should not know, and prove it, which is fantastic. Now, what's happening, though, is our brain has, a former music note, a whole, total, and complete life, a former music note that's part of the symphony. And this brain is saying, oh, that seems very, very familiar, and starts pulling in some of this information, thinking it's relevant to this life experience. Once it realizes that the information is not relevant to this life experience, it mutes it. Sometimes the children don't even remember that they had those memories. And sometimes it carries with them. They're like, yeah, I kind of remember that, but they don't focus on it, and it kind of goes back into the recesses somewhere, and maybe they, as an adult, can access it just like they would access, and only portions of that life. They don't get to see the whole thing. Only portions of maybe that music note, that life experience. Just like remembering your third birthday here. You get snippets of it, and that's about it. But it's really not relevant, so your brain's not hanging on to it. Now, when we go through a past life regression as an adult, there's a couple things that we need to look for. And first, we want to be with somebody that doesn't offer leading questions, because we don't want a storyline going in. And sometimes these leading questions can be during the interview process before you go into hypnotherapy. So they might say, I have some people that went all the way to Rome. They had memories from Roman times, or they were a part of the Knights Templar, or they were in the Civil War and they were pilots shot down. They were a nurse. They were a doctor in these stressful times. World War I, World War II, the Civil War, the Revolutionary War, and those are very, very common. And when the therapist starts or hints at or just says, oh yeah, and just part of the conversation, what they're doing is they're seeding scenes into your psyche. So when you lay down or sit up or wherever you're going to be doing this, then your brain is already formulating a story. So it's really important, if you're going to start doing this, or if you're going to do a past life regression, that you get a therapist that doesn't talk about any other experiences that they've had walk through their office. This is going to be between you and the therapist, and actually it's just you. The therapist is just going to sit there and do a guided meditation. Now, what the guided meditation is it's not seeding. All it's doing is relaxing you. And it's relaxing your brain and trying to relax some of that veiled system. So as some of these music notes in our symphony, which we are actually a part of, we are immersed in the symphony right now. When some of these music notes pass by, we can get snippets of what they were. And you don't get to see the whole life at that time. You're just going to pull out snippets, because our brain, which is another topic, 3D life versus the 2D view. Our brain really sees, depending on the trajectory, limited information. And so as these music notes are passing by, you're going to get limited information, potentially, from another or alternate life experience. Does that life experience always have to be human? No, because our symphony is created with a multitude of life experiences, not even just strictly earthbound experiences. We have, separate universal experiences that help make up this consciousness. So, yes, everybody has the ability to access it. It just depends on what's coming through your veiled system. And before we end this, really quickly, sometimes you'll go into a past life regression session and not remember anything, but 2 weeks or a month down the road, and you're driving in your car, and all of a sudden you get this snippet of some sort of memory, and you're just like, wow, that was really weird. So timing is totally different for everybody, and sometimes it will just spontaneously happen for you. All right. I hope that answered your question. Thank you very much, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.